If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. It is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack on December 18th, 2024. It is also predicted that Trump's heart attack will be triggered by a directed energy weapon that will target Trump through Bluetooth technology. The components inside the pointy thing that Trump took will facilitate this, and it is believed that when Trump visited Biden at the White House, Trump's Bluetooth MAC address was obtained, which will be used to target Trump with a directed energy weapon. J.D. Vance will also die on December 18th or soon after, and Congress will vote to make Kamala Harris a temporary president. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14. On December 24th, 2024, she will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. It is predicted that on December 25th, Joe Biden will suffer a stroke. After Kamala Harris's predicted plane crash on December 24th and Joe Biden's predicted stroke on December 25th, it is predicted that on December 26th, Joe Biden will appoint Michelle Obama as the vice president, and then Biden will step down. Michelle Obama will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. On January 12th, 2025, Michelle Obama will step down, and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. His public inauguration ceremony will be on January 20th, 2025. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on January 28th. It is predicted that on April 20th, 2025, there will be an outbreak of monkeypox or Marburg disease or both. April 20th will be a symbolic beginning to a new pandemic. Alternatively, it could also be that the symbolic beginning to the new pandemic will be on April 1st, 2025, and that on April 20th, 2025, martial law will be declared because of the new outbreak. It is predicted that on June 9th, the day after the rapture, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons after Damascus, Syria is destroyed with a nuclear weapon the day before June 9th. And it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 23rd, 2025, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2026. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Make a note right now of these alternative platforms that you can find me on, in case you can't find me later. This video will talk about the truly amazing connections between God's prophetic signs that God was demonstrating ahead of time to point to November 27th. This video was produced prior to November 27th. God was pointing to November 27th ahead of time in regards to the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, and it ended up being another step in the trail of signs. And this is how it works. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, is an interconnected web, and the full intended meaning of any of the prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to the other prophetic signs. This engenders these steps in the trail of signs leading to the particular event, in this case the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, and it is through these trails of signs and interconnected signs that God is able to tell very amazing, important stories through which he is able to communicate essential, extremely important information and knowledge. That's why all of these videos that are predicting November 27th must be watched. This is also the case for the 70 videos that I made that led Trails of Signs to February 10th, 2024. They absolutely must be watched. I could not continue to update these videos with the Trail of Signs as it progressed further. There was just too many of them. So there are 70 videos filled with these essential stories that everyone needs to know. God has been communicating the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash since 2020. And there is so much other information that you need to know, and it is contained in these 70 other videos. If you do not watch these other videos, you will have missed entirely the point of this prediction that is from God. It isn't simply to say, neat, amazing, wow, God, you predicted this. If God wanted to, he could simply tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, tell the world that such and such is going to happen on such and such date. But what would that be good for? Like I am saying, it is through these interconnected signs that God is telling these stories and conveying this information and knowledge that needs to be known. In other words, make sure that you also watch the videos that are predicting the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on February 10th. The analysis is 100% correct. If you have already watched this 8-minute clip explaining the prophetic signs that occurred on November 27th, please be patient. It is necessary that I explain what happened on November 27th and how it revealed adding an additional 9 + 9 + 9 days to get to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on December 24th. And if you have already watched this explanation for November 27th, you can skip ahead 8 minutes. After this 8-minute clip, I will get into the truly astounding information and subject of this particular video. This diagram that you are looking at here is truly profound, and there is a lot to explain. And God, through all of this, told very important and amazing stories that everyone needs to know. And this diagram and the full explanation for what happened and why it is relevant, what happened, the prophetic signs that occurred on November 27th, are explained in the 9/11 Mayor video. The video that is titled Trump Will Die, Prediction Trump Will Die on December 12th, Harris Will Crash on December 24th, equals the 9/11 Mayor, a man that God is using in his prophetic signs for very important symbolism, which points to the big warning of judgment on 9/11. Most importantly, that is the underlying symbolism, but there is so much that God has told through the 9/11 Mayor, which will be explained in the 9/11 Mayor video. But for the sake of continuity in this video, to explain the trail of signs, as I have just now explained, we have established a trail of signs that led to November 27th. November 27th is 9 plus 9 plus 9 days before December 24th, the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. God pairs 9 and 11 together to confirm the signs and connections, and that is because it points to 9/11. And that's why we have this connection involving 9 and 11 and the 9/11 mayor. On this day, the 9/11 mayor stood outside of the courthouse that he is being persecuted in by his political enemies in New York City, in the 11th state. New York City, incidentally, is also made up of 11 letters. On 9/11, it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people that flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union, because Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which in ancient Israel referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness, and in English is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out. And so the prophetic sign that we expected in advance was Rudy Giuliani, the 9/11 mayor, announcing to the world in front of the press, in front of the courthouse, where he is being persecuted, that he no longer has a bank account. And this date, a primary reason why or how this date was known ahead of time was because of the connection to the Emergencies Act with the trucker freedom protest in Ottawa, which was about the restriction or restricting of the political dissidents' bank accounts. It was exactly 145 weeks in between these two signs involving bank accounts, because 145 is the 49th semi-prime number, and we are talking about the death of Kamala Harris, the 49th vice president. There's lots to say. The trucker protest was a convoy of trucks across the continent parallel to the border wall of security with America, the 49th parallel. 49 is 7 times 7. The trucker protest began exactly 7 times 7 years after 7 justices voted to legalize abortions in the Supreme Court, and Harris is most known for advocacy for abortions. To wrap things up here, this was Thanksgiving. This date was known ahead of time because it was the day before Thanksgiving. Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash the day before Christmas on her flight back from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. Again, God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, which is the reason for 9 plus 9 plus 9 days connected to this sign in New York. And it is relevant that it is in New York, because also it connects to the day that the New York State Bar removed Giuliani's law license in New York State. And also this date is exactly 211 weeks after this other 9/11 mayor sign, and on, and 211 hints at 2 times 110 stories of the Twin Towers that collapsed on 9/11. 211 is the 15th super prime number. Rudy Giuliani was sued for $150 million, which is why he doesn't have a bank account. And this date is predicted to be 15 days before it is predicted that Trump, who is from New York and Manhattan, also will die. This connection of 211 weeks, which I can't explain much more, this end of the diagram in this video, it's explained in the Giuliani 9/11 mayor video, but this connection is also 404% of a calendar year. This 9/11 mayor sign was on the exact 400-year anniversary of the Pilgrims anchoring off Cape Cod and signing the Mayflower Compact, the predecessor to the Constitution. The sign on this date, this 9/11 mayor sign on the date 11/11, the Mayflower Compact was signed on the date 11/11, exactly 400 years earlier. This sign on this date was Giuliani's podcast, in which he, for the first time, laid out a comprehensive case of all of the evidence that the referendum had been shoplifted, which meant the end of democracy. This symbolized the beginning of democracy, and the end of democracy was symbolized with the 9/11 mayor and his case regarding the evidence on this day. And of course, the reason why Giuliani doesn't have a bank account and was sued this amount of money was for speaking the truth regarding the shoplifted referendum. And also, this 9/11 mayor sign on this date was 404 years after the Pilgrims arrived, and the Pilgrims symbolized Thanksgiving, and again, this was the Thanksgiving sign that we expected in advance. 404 years and 404% of a calendar year hint at the 44th president, the Antichrist, who is symbolized by the king of Egypt in the Bible, and the Israelites escaped the persecution from the king of Egypt after 400 years in Egypt, and then were led to the promised land. The Pilgrims saw their crossing of the Atlantic and their escape from the king of England and religious persecution, like the Israelites, as being analogous to the Israelites' departure from Egypt and crossing over the Jordan River into their promised land, their crossing of the Atlantic into the New World. The 44th president will become the Antichrist king after the death of Trump and Harris in a plane crash. And once he becomes the president and the Antichrist, he will restrict people's ability to buy and sell food based on their having taken or whether or not they have taken the mark of the Antichrist. In other words, bank accounts will be controlled, and this is why it is relevant that this coming death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash connects through these signs involving 9/11, which was about plane crashes, through the 9/11 mayor, and through the restriction of bank accounts of the left's political enemies, true conservatives and Christians. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis on November 27th, 2024. This prediction will prove everything that I am about to say in this video, and this is the purpose of this prediction from God. It is to prove the things that I will be saying. Believe me, I know far better than you the reason for this prediction that is from God, and it is to prove the things that I am saying, which is why God has given me a voice through this prediction. What we will talk about here is this amazing thing, these prophetic signs that include Elvis Presley, the day that he was in and slept in a hotel or a motel in Kalama, Washington, and the day that Kamala Harris was in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Okay? She held a campaign rally Kamala held a campaign rally in Kalamazoo on October 26th, 2024, exactly 22,700 days after Elvis Presley was in Kalama, Washington. He was in Kalama, Washington, as he was driving on a journey from Los Angeles to Seattle in order to film the movie It Happened at the World's Fair. They stopped for the night in Kalama, Washington. Okay? This journey from Los Angeles is also a hint at Kamala Harris's journey to Los Angeles, in which she is predicted to die. She is predicted to crash next to the Gateway Arch, and this sign involving Elvis and his journey to Seattle for the World's Fair points to the Space Needle. So we have these two iconic structures, landmarks, in these two cities that are being pointed to for a very good reason. And because in the Bible, judgment symbolically begins on a people at the gate, which is why Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash at the Gateway Arch in St. Louis. And through her death in a plane crash will rise the Antichrist. The former president, Barack Obama, will become the president again as a result of Kamala Harris's plane crash. On the day that Kamala Harris was in Kalamazoo, she was with Oprah Winfrey, who is known for having said that during Obama's campaign in 2008, that Obama is the Messiah, the one that she was waiting for. Okay? The one. She also spoke at the National Convention, the Democrat National Convention this year, in a major prophetic sign, which is explained in other videos. The Jimmy Carter videos, if not the Paul Simon videos. And I'll be explaining more about that sign, I think. Look for the Beetlejuice video. I think I put the thumbnail with the Beetlejuice. But anyway, it was a very, very prophetic sign, and I won't get into the details here. But she spoke, and at that convention, and she was dressed in purple, and she had her purple earrings, which is all prophetic. The earrings, well, I won't get into it. Well, okay, so she wore these purple earrings that looked like stones, and, well, no, I won't get into it. Except to say that the Ring movie is about how people that see The Ring, this horror movie, will die in 7 days. Her speech at the convention was exactly 7 years after the eclipse. That was a ring. It was a solar eclipse, which engenders a ring, and that's the actual poster art for the movie The Ring. But anyway, the point that I'm making here is that she wore all purple, and that's very prophetic, which I explained in the other video. And it was Tim Waltz's night, and he's from the very purple state of Minnesota, the 32nd state, which hints at Obama because his name equals 32 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And 32 is 4 times 8, and Obama will become the 48th president. Well, anyway, she wore all purple, and then after she spoke, the Democrat convention went crazy, singing the song Let's Go Crazy by Prince from the album Purple Rain. And in the song, in the chorus, there is mention of an arrival of the purple banana, which is a play on Obama. God is using these words similar sounding to Obama. And purple is the symbol for the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, but also because of the scarlet, if you're wondering, the scarlet and purple in Revelation 18. And so, or is it both Revelation 17 and 18? And it's symbolic because actually it's symbolism for royalty. Dates back to ancient Rome, and that's also Antichrist symbolism. Well, anyway, the point here is that they sang Let's Go Crazy, and it was talking about the purple banana, and the end of the song Let's Go Crazy ends with, he's coming, take me away. And then there's the guitar solo that Prince plays. And so this was a calling, a seance, if you will, for the Antichrist. So anyway, I just touched upon that. I didn't mean to go into too much detail, just to give you a little background for the significance of Oprah Winfrey in this sign at Kalamazoo. And actually, from what I understand, when she got on the stage, she said, "Hello, Kalamazoo." And I think how she said it was like this: "Hello, Kalamazoo," or should I say, "Hello, Kalamazoo." And so that's actually related to the seance that happened at the Democrat convention. And I mean that literally. It really was, for those who have eyes to see, spiritually a seance that was conjuring up the Antichrist, Barack Obama. Okay, now the reason why this is so, well, also, Elvis Presley is from, lived in Memphis. His Graceland estate in Memphis, named after Memphis, Egypt, in the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt. Because in the Bible, Egypt and the king of Egypt are symbolism for the Antichrist system and the Antichrist. And that's why Kamala Harris will die in St. Louis. It will point to this area of Little Egypt nearby that connects to St. Louis with the I-55 highway. And it is 5G frequencies that will trigger the mass demonic possession on June 9th, or at least the symbolic beginning of this. The I-55 highway also connects to Chicago, the home of the Antichrist, the hometown. And the 5G frequencies and the mass demonic possession are alluded to in the fifth trumpet in the Bible. And also in the Bible, according to the Bible, the most wicked, evil king in ancient Israel's history ruled for 55 years. And okay, so Elvis would have traveled from Los Angeles to Seattle on the I-5 highway. Kamala Harris will be returning to Los Angeles, which hints at, in God's signs, fallen angels. She will be returning to her $5 million mansion near the I-5 highway. That's why the day that Elvis spent, or the night that he spent in Kalama, Washington, was exactly 5 months after the Space Needle opened at the World's Fair in 1962. The Space Needle is amazing given that we are talking about a connection to Elvis. Because Elvis is a big part of the history of the pointy things. The pointy thing industry would not be what it is today had it not been for this event when Elvis took the pointy thing in front of the press and cameras before he performed on the Ed Sullivan Show on October 28th, 1956. He made it acceptable for the baby boomer generation, which drives everything, to take pointy things. Okay, he promoted the pointy thing and that changed everything. And the baby boomer generation thus thereafter saw it as cool to take a pointy thing. All right? Now, and that's key. It's key in history. That's what God is pointing to, furthermore. And that's why the Space Needle. But Space Needle is more than just a pointy thing, because obviously that's what it's hinted at with the needle, because it looks like a needle too. You know what? And what I mean by that is a needle that you press on and put something into someone with, right? But also it's the Space Needle. That's amazing for many reasons. By the way, I'm going to get back to the relevance of the 22,700 days. Just hold on a second. So Space Needle is a hint at the mark of the Antichrist, which is the transhumanism technology that is the begins with an M, ends with an and then has an R, and then ends with an NA, pointy thing. Okay, that's a chromosome therapy pointy thing that has never been used before. It was an experiment, as we know. And so this is what's alluded to with the Space Needle. But also, in the near future, on June 9th, this symbolic date here of the beginning of the demonic realm colliding with the earthly realm, there will be demons pretending to be aliens that will promote the pointy things. and through it they will promise immortality. The big lie that was told at the beginning of the age in the Garden of Eden to Eve, which is that she shall surely not die, and will be the big lie to close the age. It comes full circle. And that's also why the baby boomer generation will not pass away before the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ and all of these end times events. Okay, so now the World's Fair, this is also key and symbolic. It was the World's Fair, the World Fair, I should say, in Seattle in 1962. That's what the Space Needle was built for. And that's symbolic of the deception that is coming upon the world from space, or supposedly, when demons pretend to be aliens. There will be a symbolic beginning to this. I believe this will be just speculating, but I know that God is pointing to this as a symbolic beginning to all of this. And so therefore, I think it's safe to conclude that this will be the day that aliens will be in the mainstream news. Probably also on this day, or maybe shortly after, the Pope, the first of the two Antichrists, the second one, Barack Obama, gets his power from the first one. The Pope, on this day or soon after, will declare that the demons pretending to be aliens have made him the ambassador for the world. Hence the World's Fair. Now, it was the World Fair in 1962. 62 because it is the 22nd semi-prime number, and the number 22 in God's signs is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The inverse of the mark of the Antichrist in the book of Ezekiel would have been a Tav mark, and the Tav letter is the last and 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and the mark of the Antichrist is the last book of the Bible and the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. But also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, and chromosomes comes in pairs of 2 arms. A chromosome is made of 2 arms, and they come in pairs. And that's why 2 and 2 hints at the chromosome that is altered by the pointy thing, which makes it the mark, because people are marked in their genetics with this thing. And the thing that they're inserting into their chromosomes is snake venom. But that's another story. But the snake is or rather I should say synthesized snake venom. That is what the protruding amino acid chain is in the CVD disease. And it is the biggest symbol of evil in the Bible. It's the symbol of Satan, and so that's why it is the mark. People are marked when they have inserted this snake substance into their chromosomes. And anyway, that's why the number 22. But that's why the Space Needle opened at the World Fair in 22. But how is God going to point to all of this? How is he going to tell this story? How is he going to communicate this significance of the opening of the Space Needle? Well, through Elvis, through this story that I am telling. This is why God develops a big picture of signs to connect the signs together to form a big picture in order to tell stories that thereby communicate extremely important information and knowledge that everyone needs to know. That's why God doesn't simply tap someone on the shoulder and say, tell the world that Kamala Harris is going to die on November 27th. That in itself would give us essentially nothing. It is only through these interconnected signs that God is able to communicate these stories and therefore the knowledge. And so that's why the full intended meaning of any of the prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their connections and context with the other prophetic signs, which is something that the people, most of the people that study these signs have missed. And that's why also the vast majority of signs have been missed, which are only being explained on this channel, including, for example, the opening of the Space Needle. But now I'm saying that the Space Needle connects to the date that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash near the, or next to, the Gateway Arch. That's amazing. These two signs, these two symbolic structures of these two cities are meant to be connected to each other, in other words. Because again, the gateway hints at the judgment. Now, we are going to talk about the date that the construction began on the Space Needle, but Kamala Harris was born exactly 1 year and 8 months and 8 days after construction began on the Gateway Arch. 1 year, 8 months, and 8 days hints at 188, this number that God uses frequently to point to H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance, which is the word that means woe, exclamation mark, used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God, which is why she will die, or rather this woman that was born with this 188 symbolism after the construction of the arch will die next to the arch, and then lead to her replacement with the Antichrist. Okay, so I think it's now time that we explain the relevance of this 22,700 days. That hints at 227, the 49th prime number. Kamala Harris is the 49th vice president. That's amazing. She was in Kalamazoo with Oprah Winfrey 22,700 days after Elvis was in Kalama, Washington, on his way to the Space Needle. Amazing, amazing. Now, also, Kamala Harris is predicted to die in St. Louis, for which the area code is 314. 314 hints at pi, 3.14. For mathematicians, shorthand for pi is 22 over 7. The closest fraction to approach pi is 22 divided by 7. That's what's also hinted at with this. Now also, it's predicted that Kamala Harris will die in St. Louis, and her plane will crash into the Major League Baseball stadium where the Cardinals play, the St. Louis Cardinals, the stadium being named Busch Stadium. Cardinals because she is predicted to die due to a bird strike. And Busch Stadium in the area code 314 because God gave Moses his name from the burning bush in Exodus 3:14. And that's why when she crashes into Busch Stadium, it will be a burning bush. Her fiery crash into Busch Stadium will be a burning bush that points to Exodus 3:14 and God. That's also what's being communicated here with this 22,700 days connection. This is so huge. This isn't the only, by far, there's so much to do with Elvis in God's big picture of science. But as we can see, this is a massively important connection here. We are connecting all of this. Elvis, and a big reason for Elvis is this date that he took the pointy thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist. But it's the current, specifically the current pointy thing that is the mark of the Antichrist, the CVD thing. Right? And it is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or false form of religious worship. In fact, for those that are wise, there was false religious worship that went along with it. And it does not need an additional or a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is in fact judgment for this particular doctrine that Jesus said he hates in Revelation chapter 2, and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. For the commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy that tell them that this can't be the mark of the Antichrist, I point you to the snake bite video on this channel where I answer those objections. But make no mistake, when this prediction comes to pass, it will prove what I am saying is true. And that is the purpose of this prediction. I know far better than you the reason for this prediction, and it is to prove what I have just said. It is the mark of the Antichrist. Case closed. End of debate. No more discussion. And so it is through these connections with Elvis and her death at the Gateway Arch that we are once again confirming that it is the mark of the Antichrist. Furthermore, she will crash in St. Louis, which is near the midpoint of the two X's, or rather the X that was engendered with the two eclipses that crossed each other over America, 7 years apart, as in Daniel chapter 9, for those that know what I'm talking about. They engendered an X, and the X in God's signs is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist because of the Tav letter, but also the chromosomes that are altered through taking the mark of the Antichrist. And St. Louis will be pointing to this, like I'm saying. And the place where the eclipses crossed each other was over Little Egypt, where Elvis died, in Memphis, Tennessee, in his mansion, which is symbolic of the king's palace in Egypt. Because the king of Egypt persecuted God's people, just like the Antichrist will, through the mark of the Antichrist. That's why the X that symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist was centered over Little Egypt near St. Louis. And Kamala Harris's plane crash will point to all of this. Now, what are X's? They are two straight lines that cross each other in their midpoints. Therefore, what is the midpoint date of the two eclipses? It was December 14th, 2020, the first day that an American took the pointy thing outside of a trial. It is the symbolic day of the pointy thing. And it was pointed to through the eclipses that are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Okay. Also, by the way, on December 14th, 2020, there was a 4.4 magnitude earthquake in at Hawaii's highest point, 4.4 miles deep on its northwestern flank. This is because Obama, the 44th president, is from Hawaii. The name Bama means high place in Hebrew. This was the highest place. And also the northwest flank, because in Daniel chapter 8, the Antichrist comes from the northwest. That said, exactly due northwest from Jerusalem is Rome. That's because the first of the two Antichrists is Pope Francis. All right. So let's get into some more details now. Explained in this diagram. Oops, I forgot to write in the numbers here down at the bottom. Oh, well. So from the day that she was in from the day that Kamala was in Kalamazoo with Oprah as in Let's Go Crazy, as in Kalamazoo, it's 32 days to the date she is predicted to die from a plane crash. And that's relevant because 32 is equal to Obama in simple English gematria. It is also equal to 4 times 8, which hints at the 48th president. It is also equal to 2 times 16, which hints at 216, which is the equivalent of the name Barack in English gematria. And also 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, the number of the Antichrist, and Barack Obama was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. And also, it is 4 weeks and 4 days, which hints at the 44th president becoming the 48th president. Okay, as a result of Kamala's death in a plane crash. Now, this in turn is 194 days to this Revelation 9/11 day, King Apollyon day, aliens or demons pretending to be aliens day, beginning of the zombie pandemic day, mass demonic possession day, etc. 7 Thunders Day, Revelation chapter 10. Okay. Now, that's relevant because she will die at St. Louis, and as I have now explained, it will point to the mark of the Antichrist, which is symbolized by the number 22. And that's why this 194 days connection, because 194 is the 22nd super semi-prime number. Now, we have a second witness for this, and this is how, by the way, God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required, and this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. So this trail right here, which is broken up with the date of Kamala Harris's plane crash, is also this. And we, again, are talking about Kalamazoo and Oprah Winfrey, as in let's go crazy, as in the mass demonic possession that's coming. And that's why this day, when the two got together in Kalamazoo, it is 226 days to the symbolic beginning of the mass demonic possession and people going crazy. It's absolutely stunning. Because 226 is the number that points to H226 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance, which is the word that means prophetic sign. In other words, this confirms that this is a prophetic sign that points to the day of the coming mass demonic possession. But not only that, we have a second witness to this second witness, which is that 226 days is 32 weeks and 2 days, which hints at 322, or rather, I should say, Genesis 3:22. And that's because Genesis 3:22 symbolizes what I spoke of earlier, which is this coming promise of immortality spoken of in, or spoken to Eve by Satan, the serpent in the garden, the big lie. That's what God is using 300, or rather combinations of 3 and 2 and 2 in his signs for. But that's extremely relevant in this context because that's exactly what we are talking about, this coming deception and beginning of the demonic realm colliding with the earthly realm that is leading to more pointy things that will promise immortality. Okay? So that's amazing because it's extremely relevant. That's what is going on here. The pointy things will lead to are leading to the mass demonic possession. And in this deception is this promise of immortality, which is symbolized by Genesis 3:22. Okay. Now, in the Bible, the number 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist. Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was the 13th generation from Adam. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 13th days of the month, and the 2 Antichrists are described in the book of Revelation in chapter 13. And also, the number 13 is symbolic of America, founded on 13 colonies, and so the American Antichrist was born exactly 13 months before Elvis was in Kalama, Washington, and Obama will become the president again as a result of the death of Kamala Harris. Okay. By the way, I'll explain it again. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama. President Trump will die before the electors meet, and the electors will then select Michelle Obama as the president-elect because of the epic level of corruption within the blue team and the Democrat Party in the Civil War. And then she will appoint Barack Obama as her vice president after Joe Biden steps down and makes her the president. And then Michelle Obama will step down and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. He will be appointed instead of elected, thus overcoming the 22nd Amendment's restriction on someone being elected more than twice. Obama was born 110 days after construction began at the Space Needle. It was also 110 days after the Chicago Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup, their last time winning for 49 years before they won while Obama was in the White House, and Obama will return to the White House as a result of the death of the 49th vice president. It's 110 days because the Space Needle is the Space Needle is a tower, and the Twin Towers were 110 stories high. The Twin Towers were part of the World Trade Center, and the Space Needle was built for the World Fair. So from the beginning date of the construction on the Space Needle, it is 505 days, which gives us a second witness through this trail here. And again, if I didn't emphasize it enough, Elvis Presley is the king of rock and roll, and this is symbolic of the Antichrist king. Again, he lived in Little Egypt, in Memphis, in a king's palace, etc. And Memphis, in God's signs, is associated with the number 55 because the I-55 highway runs through it, and it runs to Chicago and St. Louis with the I-55. The I-55 connects Memphis to St. Louis, which then connects to Chicago. And I explained a minute ago the significance of 5 and 55. The most wicked king in the Bible ruled for 55 years. This 505 days hints at this. And we are talking about Elvis, the king of rock and roll that lived next to the I-55. Furthermore, the pointy thing, which is what is hinted at with the Space Needle, is what will facilitate the demonic possession, the mass demonic possession that is described in the 5th trumpet in the book of Revelation. And this will be facilitated through 5G frequencies. The components that are in people that have taken the pointy thing are self-assembling, and they will assemble into some sort of conductor that will receive the 5G frequencies, which will then facilitate delta brain waves, trigger delta brain waves in the brain, which will facilitate the mass demonic possession. Elvis is known, of course, for his music. The Graceland estate has on its gate to the estate musical notes. And that's also symbolic of a wall of security, another symbol from the Bible. Just like towers. The Tower of Babel, speaking of the tower connection here, the Tower of Babel, if I didn't emphasize this enough, hence the Space Needle, which is a tower, which, by the way, the Tower of Babel is in Genesis 11, another reason why the towers were 110 stories high, as it hints at Genesis 11. The Tower of Babel is the story of man attempting to become like God with its technology, which is exactly what the coming promise of immortality will be through the pointy thing transhumanism technology. There is a phrase in the Bible, Ephesians 2, verse 2, which is another reason, by the way, why the number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, because of Ephesians 2:2. It's this phrase that's used to describe Satan as being the prince of the power of the air. And so again, the mass demonic possession will be triggered through frequencies in the air, the 5G frequencies of those who are marked with the mark of the Antichrist, with the serpent chromosomes inside their chromosomes. Okay, and so that's why the association with Elvis, the king of rock and roll. Rock and roll is a type of music, which is frequencies in the air. Music is frequencies in the air, just like 5G frequencies are. Okay. So let's go here now. Well, speaking of Kamala Harris, from the day that Elvis Presley was in Kalama, which again connected to the day that Kamala was in Kalamazoo, from the day that Elvis was in Kalama, it is 777 days to the date that Kamala Harris was born. The birth of Kamala is 777 days after Elvis was in Kalama. The number 7 is God's signature number, indicating his divine touch upon something, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. But more than that, also, 777 is 7 times 111. And 111 God uses to point to G111 in the Strong's Greek Concordance, which is the word that means abomination, which is what the mark of the Antichrist is, and those who have taken it. It's an abomination. It's a spiritual abomination. It, for one thing, changes a person's chromosomes, but also it uses in its development cells from unborn babies. Okay, it's an abomination. And from the birth of Kamala Harris, we connect to the Antichrist with exactly 2,309 weeks to his inauguration as the 44th president. I mentioned earlier that the big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that is only being explained on this channel works on the principle of second, third, and multiple witnesses confirming a matter. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9, 23, and 44. And I know this because I've been studying his big picture of signs from morning until night for more than full-time hours for 7 years. And the reason is 9 is the year in which he was inaugurated, 09, and he is the basketball president who wore 23, and he's the 44th president. Okay, and so that's why the exact, because he will become the president again through the death of Kamala Harris, which is why it is exactly 2,309 weeks to the birth of, or from the birth of Kamala Harris to his inauguration. Also, if we subtract the 0, which is how it works in God's signs, you can subtract the 0, we get 239, which is the 52nd semi-prime number. And no, it is the 52nd prime number. And 52 hints at 2 times 26, which hints at 226. The H226th word in Strong's Greek Hebrew concordance, which means prophetic sign. In other words, the birth of Kamala Harris and the connection to the inauguration of Obama is a prophetic sign. And also it's 531 months, which is a hint at the amount of days in between blood moon tetrads, from the 1st to the 4th of the blood moon tetrad, lunar eclipse. It is 531 days, and on and on. Okay, so now this connection here to the day that Elvis took the pointy thing in front of the world with the press, photographing this, etc., before he went on the Ed Sullivan Show, that date, October 28th, 1956, is 2,137 days before Elvis was in Kalama on his way to the Space Needle. Okay, so he took a needle, and it connects with this number of days to him on the way to the Space Needle. Well, 2,137 days is the 322nd prime number. And that is jaw-dropping. It is amazing beyond words because, again, this hints at the verse that symbolizes this promise of immortality, this big lie that's coming with the upcoming pointy things. Genesis 3:22. This is amazing. These two dates, Elvis and the Space Needle, and Elvis with the pointy thing connects with the the number 322, which hints at Genesis 3:22. Okay, now, the pointy thing that will promise immortality will be promoted by the demons pretending to be aliens, which is why in the last days of Elvis's life, he was wearing a jacket that had a big Mayan calendar sign on it, because the arrival of Cortez, the conquistador, in the Yucatan Peninsula coincided with an eclipse, and the Aztecs perceived him and his crew to be aliens, invaders from another world, or not invaders, but gods from another world, etc. So there's that symbolism associated with Elvis and aliens, but also on the day that Elvis died was what astronomy calls the wow signal. It's called the wow signal. You can look this up on Wikipedia, because an astronomer observed something that was highly unusual, and for many decades, until just a couple of years ago, maybe even less, I forget, it was determined what it probably was. But for the longest time, it was thought to be possibly a sign of intelligent life in the universe somewhere out there. So it was the wow signal, okay? And that occurred on the day that Elvis died. Not by coincidence, but a coincidence designed by God, because of the symbolism I am talking about. And so Elvis died in 77, which is why this connection is also 70 months and 7 days. It hints at 77. But also, to the day Elvis died, it connects profoundly to Elvis taking the pointy thing. And that connection is 7,597 days, which is the 2026th semi-prime number, which hints at H226, the word that means prophetic sign. That's amazing beyond words. And again, Elvis died in Memphis, which is a symbol or hints at Egypt, the Antichrist, symbolism for the Antichrist. So the death of Elvis that coincided with this big thing in astronomy that is aliens symbolism connects profoundly to the day that Elvis took the pointy thing, which is symbolic of the pointy thing, the king of rock and roll, as in the Antichrist king, which also connects to the day that Elvis was on his way to the Space Needle at the World Fair in the year that it opened. The Space Needle opened just days after. In fact, it was exactly 5 months. That's because the flood judgment in the Bible lasted for exactly 5 months. And the flood judgment followed the description of man, humans, having corrupted chromosomes because they mixed with the giants, which is symbolism for aliens, fallen angels. Now this 5 months is also 2 plus 3 months, which since it's 23, but also 2 divided by 3 is 0.666, the number of the Antichrist. Again, the Space Needle opened. That's the day, by the way. Again, this is the date that the Space Needle opened. And it was in the World Fair in 62, as I explained, the 22nd semi-prime number, symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, that changes a person's 23 pairs of chromosomes. And again, the 22 hints at that too, because a pair of chromosomes is 2 and 2 arms of 2 chromosomes. 2 arms each in a chromosome. By the way, Philip Petit walked across the Twin Towers. I'm jumping ahead. Let me just finish this. Well, let's just talk about it. So Philip Petit was this extreme performer from France. He, when the Twin Towers opened, felt that he needed to walk across them with a tightrope and a balancing pole. And so he evaded security and successfully walked across the towers and became famous. And one of the arms of the two arms in a chromosome is named petite, which is French for small. So there's a small arm and a big arm, I suppose. And one of the two arms in scientific terminology, biology, is termed the petite arm. Okay, and so that's why Philip Petite walked across the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers are symbolic of the two arms of a chromosome. This is of the World Trade Center. We're talking about the mark of the Antichrist. Philip Petite walked across the Twin Towers exactly 70 weeks after they opened, on the date 44, which hints at the 44th president, which incidentally was exactly 23 years after the UN Trustee Council officially recommended that Jerusalem be made an international city, which is what the Antichrist and the world will do in the end, which will bring about the wrath of God on the world. So that's anyway a combination or a pairing of 23 and 44, the 23 years to the date 44, when the Twin Towers opened, and then 70 weeks exactly after that was the day that Philip Petite walked across the Twin Towers. Now, the Twin Towers are 110 stories high because Jesus officially arrived in his first coming into Jerusalem, as in like a walk. He walked into, well, he actually rode the donkey, but it was on the date 110 in the Hebrew calendar, Nisan 10. 110 hints at 110. And so 110 symbolizes the first coming, and therefore two towers of 110 stories hints at the first coming times two. In other words, the second coming, which is why it was two towers of 110 stories that collapsed on 9/11. When they collapsed, there was a perfectly proportioned steel beam cross standing upright in the debris field. And that cross today is in the 9/11 museum. It was one of the things that influenced me, or rather coaxed me into coming to the truth about Lord Jesus Christ. But that steel beam cross at the end of the Twin Towers pointed to the cross that was engendered when Philip Petite walked across the Twin Towers on a tightrope with a balancing pole with a man at the center. It engendered a cross. So we had a cross at the beginning and the end of the Twin Towers, which again hints at the first and second comings of Lord Jesus Christ. The exact 70 weeks, because the most central prophecy in the Bible is the 70 weeks prophecy that gives the exact number of days until the timing of the first coming, which I explained many times, but I'll just go through it quickly. The prophecy speaks of there being a decree to rebuild Jerusalem and its walls, and the only one that includes the rebuilding of the walls out of the four that talk about rebuilding Jerusalem, the four decrees, is the one in Nehemiah chapter 2 when King Artaxerxes gave the decree. And it was the first of Nisan, because the date isn't given, and we know that from tradition that when that's the case, it refers to the first of the month. And the Royal British Observatory confirms that date in 445 BC, which we know to be the case because of the history of Artaxerxes, and it gives the year of his reign. I think it's the 20th year of his reign, 445 BC. The Royal British Observatory confirms that date to be March I believe it's March 14th, 445 BC. Well, anyway, when we add the number of days that the Archangel Gabriel told Daniel to record as following the decree, we get the exact number of days, and it's 7 times 7 years, 490 years. But a year in biblical prophecy is 12 months of 30 days each. So 360 days times the 7 times 7 years. Sorry. 69 times 7 years. Okay, it's the 70 weeks prophecy. A week in Hebrew simply means a unit of 7. Doesn't mean like 7 days. So we know it's a week is a year period of 7 years. 69 times those is 490 years. And if we use biblical prophetic years, we get 173,000 days. And if we add that number of days, we get exactly April 8th, 32 AD. And the Gospel of Luke tells us that Jesus' ministry began in the 15th year of Tiberius, and Tiberius began his reign in 14 AD, or maybe I have it backwards, but anyway, 14 plus 15 is 29 AD, and the Gospel of John tells us that his ministry, during it, he observed 4 Passovers and was crucified on the 4th one. So 29, 30, 31, 32. Jesus was crucified on the Passover in 32 AD. April 8th, 32 AD, which is the number of days we get, the Royal British Observatory confirms that that is the Sunday before the full moon Passover on which Jesus was crucified. In other words, the Sunday, which is known in Christianity before he was crucified, is Palm Sunday, when he officially arrived into Jerusalem. And that's what the prophecy speaks of, his official arrival. So Gabriel gave Daniel the exact number of days. Now, for those that think that his arrival was in any other year, well, I just proved that it wasn't. But in case you have any other ideas, a proper understanding of this prophecy recognizes that it requires 5,888 moons, which means there must be an extra month of Adar in the year that he was crucified, and 30, 31, and 33 AD do not have an extra month of Adar. Okay, so that's why I had to go off onto that tangent, because it's the most beautiful thing. It's the most important prophecy in the Bible. It proves the Lord, Jesus, and also that's the reason for the 70 weeks exactly from the opening of the Twin Towers to Philip Petit engendering a cross over the Twin Towers that symbolized the first coming on the date 110 because of the towers being 110 stories. Okay, let's finish this up now. As I said also earlier, God pairs 23 and 44. The 44th president is the basketball president who wore 23, and so that's why this 4 plus 4 plus 4 months exact connection to the date that the movie Elvis starred in about the World Fair in Seattle was released. It happened at the World's Fair, is the name of the movie. That's amazing. This is also 7 months, which is at the 70 weeks, but also the symbolic 7 years in Bible prophecy, which, by the way, we get from that same prophecy, the final 70th 7 years, 70th set of 7 years, is symbolic of the end times and the Antichrist, and it is only symbolic. In other words, we have already finished the 7 years, which began in 2017. There is a principle in the Bible of a period of 7 followed by an 8. That's the reason for the 8th year of destruction following the 7 years of prophetic signs. And the reason for this prediction being made in this video is to prove this. So those that still have the timelines they are looking at for a supposed beginning of the final set of 7 years, you can throw them out now. And believe me, I know far better than you the reason for this prediction. It is to prove what I have just said. When the prediction comes to pass, it will prove that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. And the true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections overwhelmingly confirms what I just said. Case closed. The Lord will return in his second coming on the Day of Atonement. Well, actually, I'm not 100% on that. I actually think that there'll be events happening anyway that will coincide with the fall feasts, and it's quite likely actually that the Lord will not return until the first day of Hanukkah. That's another story. But anyway, we've got 1 year, the 8th year of destruction. Okay? To make it clear, we're talking about the end of 2025, December of 2025. All right, there is more gems, if you will, to be found in all of this, because the movie It Happened at the World's Fair was the first movie that Kurt Russell starred in. Kurt Russell, in another prophetic use of him, starred in Escape from New York and When the Predicted Dirty Bombs Will Explode on December 16th, 2024. There will be an attempt to escape from New York, an evacuation, in other words. And also, speaking of Elvis, Kurt Russell starred in this movie about Elvis. The name of the movie, Elvis. It was a made-for-TV movie. Okay, so Kurt Russell, his first movie is in this Elvis movie, and then he also played Elvis in this Elvis made-for-TV movie in 1979. That's amazing and confirmation that this is important. What is God communicating here? Well, the movie Elvis was, surprisingly, directed by John Carpenter, which is interesting given that he is known for his horror movies, including a movie named The Thing, starring Kurt Russell. Before we get to that, though, Jimmy Carter is being used in God's signs for symbolism for the 5th through 8th king's prophecy, which identifies Obama as the 8th king. It's the secondary fulfillment of it, incidentally. It's really about Rome and the Pope. Okay, and that inauguration day is 2 years and 22 days, which hints at 22, the number that symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist, which will turn people into things. Okay, The Thing. So if you don't know The Thing, it's a classic, well, I'd say it's kind of like a classic horror movie, but it's also related to another classic horror movie. They're both based on the same book. Forget the name of the book. Let me just get it. Okay, The Thing and The Thing from Another World, the other classic movie based on the same novella, the novella is titled Who Goes There? But I can see why they changed the name. That's not really a great title. Let me just finish this first before getting into that. Okay, John Carpenter hints at Jesus, who was a carpenter. Kurt is, I think, a hint at the Antichrist curse. Kurt Russell, right? I think that's a play on that. If we just remove the T, we've got Russell, right? It's curse. Well, anyway, the date that this movie was released, and by the way, the date it was released is the date 2/11, which hints at 2 times 11 equals 22. That's also a confirmation of the 2 years, 22 days connection to the inauguration of Carter, who is being used for the 5th through 8th King's prophecy, which is why the release of this King of Rock and Roll movie is 271 days, which is the 58th prime number, as in the 5th through 8th King's prophecy, to 9/11, the big warning of judgment, which again is also pointing to not only the towers that are symbolic of chromosomes that are changed and will facilitate or lead to mass demonic possession, but also the date 9/11 hints at Revelation 9/11, which is the verse in the book of Revelation that symbolizes all this. That's amazing because it's the 58th prime number, okay? And we're talking about the king of rock and roll and the beginning symbolic date of Carter, who is this symbolism for this. Now, more is explained regarding what I just explained in the significance of Carter in the Jimmy Carter videos. So I won't explain any more than that here. Okay, now, again, John Carpenter directed the movie The Thing with Kurt Russell. The movie, as well as the classic from 1951 as well, based on the same novella, is about aliens. It's an alien life form that lands in the case of The Thing in the Kurt Russell movie, lands in Antarctica, and the scientists that are there become possessed. This evil being takes the form. It's like a blob of some sort, and when it touches another life form, can replicate that life form. It becomes that life form. So in the movie, you're looking at a character, but it could really be an imposter, a possessed replica of that being, human, a dog also in the movie, but really it's the alien in that who has taken that form. Okay? So in other words, it's symbolism for what this theme is of demonic possession. The demons will come in and take control of the people, just like the alien did in the movie. And furthermore, the demons will pretend to be aliens, as I have been explaining. That's why this is huge. That's why God pointed to Kurt Russell through Elvis here. Because of the John Carpenter Kurt Russell movie. And proof of this is that the release of the classic The Thing from Another World, the same premise movie as The Thing with Kurt Russell and John Carpenter, this movie was released exactly 883 months before it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die next to the Gateway Arch, near where the X was engendered over America, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which will trigger mass demonic possession. It's amazing beyond words, because 883 months or 883 is the 153rd prime number. Now that's an unusually specific number, one of 3 in the New Testament, which is very prophetic and regards the time of the end. It's alluding to it, another story. But also, this important prophetic symbolic number in the Bible is 9 times 17. The Antichrist was president from 2009 until 2017. Also, in America, Constitution Day is the date 9/17, which is why the president who was president from 2009 to 17 was the unconstitutional president. And again, when he returns, it'll be a constitutional crisis because of him being already president for 2 terms. Well, not only that, this 153 number hints at 1 Thessalonians 5:3. 1 Thessalonians 5:3 is this well-known verse that speaks of the coming destruction catching people by surprise, like a trap. When people, as the verse goes, when people say peace and security, then sudden destruction, and they will not escape. That's the verse. I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty much the verse, okay? When people are saying peace and security, then sudden destruction, and they will not escape. That's what's coming. It'll be sudden. Like she's going to die, and then right after that, Trump's going to die, and right after that, Obama's going to become the president again, and on in this rapid pace, end times year that's upcoming. Okay? And that's why this is huge, because it begins with this sudden event, this seismic event, if you will, of Kamala Harris dying in a plane crash. And speaking of which, there is a prophetic earthquake that recently happened in Thessaloniki. That was a 5.3 that occurred at 5:03 p.m. And to learn about how that connects to the date Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash and this sudden destruction and they will not escape theme on November 27th, watch the Turkey Day prophecy video on this channel. Because she'll die the day before Turkey Day. And she'll die due to a bird strike, etc. Okay. So one last thing here, which is a side note, unless I figure out how it isn't. But speaking of the World's Fair, there is a famous movie, Meet Me in St. Louis, starring Judy Garland, a musical, a classic, one of the most well-known movies in all of cinematic history. It was released 5 days before it was released in the wider theaters in St. Louis, because the movie is Meet Me in St. Louis. And that day that it was released in St. Louis was 44 days after the World Series in 1944. So the 44 World Series was won 44 days before the release of Meet Me in St. Louis. But what's amazing about it is that this World Series was between the two teams from St. Louis. That doesn't happen. Okay. There are, for one thing, no longer two baseball teams in St. Louis. And the St. Louis Browns moved to Baltimore because actually of this World Series. The Little League World Series that year in Baltimore drew more attention than the World Series. I suppose this was because of the World War. Speaking of the World War was happening. And so anyway, they played at that time in the same stadium. Kamala Harris is going to die into a crash into the baseball stadium in St. Louis. It actually does all connect in a way. Okay, so that's just amazing. You got that right. The 44 World Series in St. Louis, in between two teams from St. Louis, was finished 44 days before Meet Me in St. Louis was released. One other thing too, the date that it was released to the wider world, if you will, was 5 days later. The middle date, 3 days after this, November 25th, was the day that the first commissioner of baseball died. He was given unchecked power in a moment of crisis after the 1919 World Series scandal. And he had power over every person in baseball, unchecked power. And that day that he came to power in a moment of crisis was exactly 666 days after the 6+6+6th Amendment was ratified, the 18th Amendment, which was prohibition, the prohibition on buying and selling alcohol, which hints at the coming restriction on buying and selling food by the Antichrist for those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, only to those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, the good citizens, so-called. Okay, and of course 666 is the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. So I think we've finished this video here. God bless, and I'll leave you with this. The parable that Jesus told in Matthew 25 when he spoke to Christians. He said the Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold was banished to hell. So much for once saved, always saved. And the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth. But unfortunately, because of this doctrine, evangelicals have a phobia when it comes to doing works because they think that if they think they need to need to do some works, then they're jeopardizing their salvation, because their salvation is based on holding a precise, correct doctrine, which is absurd. And furthermore, is completely in contradiction with the Bible. I mean, throughout it, including the writings of Paul. Paul, when he spoke about works, was talking about the works of the Mosaic law and circumcision, okay? It wasn't, and furthermore, we are not to be interpreting the teachings of Jesus through the writings of Paul. It's the other way around. Anyway, this is a massive bag of gold. There's no evangelical tool like this prediction. When it comes to pass, make sure you share the link to this video or another video on this channel, and don't ever stop sharing it, including in places you never go. Don't just preach to the choir. And also, if you would like the file for the flyer I hand out, please contact me. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts, which are largely based in error anyway. Now is the time to be warning people. As watchers, you need to be warning. Read Ezekiel 3 and 33. Now is the time to be warning the people with the precise information that is on my flyer. In other words, I believe that nothing compares to my flyer in terms of what needs to be warned to people right now. And it's a great strategic flyer. I think you'll appreciate it. And you can hand them out on busy street corners and car windshields in busy parking lots or in mailboxes. If you feel you may have some time, if you may perhaps be watching too many videos, you can potentially, in the time of watching a video, help hundreds of people. All right, and also carry them wherever you go. When you're waiting in line at the bank, when you're in the supermarket, whatever, hand them out. Don't be shy. And for those that are shy, I have this to say: get over it. Courage isn't a lack of fear, it's action in spite of it, and God wants us to be courageous. One very important thing that I forgot to point out is the day that Elvis took the pointy thing that changed the history of pointy things was October 28th, and that hints at 128, and the 128th word in Strong's Greek Concordance, which is the word the Ethiopian. The Ethiopian was the representative of the Queen of Egypt in the New Testament. And it was Philip that was told to go to Gaza, where he encountered the Ethiopian, and then afterwards was raptured. And God's faithful will be raptured from the persecution from the Antichrist, who was born in East Africa near Ethiopia. In fact, he was born exactly 128 weeks before Michelle Obama was born, and it is she, as being a queen, if you will, like the Queen of Egypt, that was the queen over the Ethiopian. She, in other words, the symbolism of the queen, she will appoint Barack Obama as the vice president and make him the president. And so that's in itself Egypt symbolism. And we are talking about Elvis, who lived and died in Little Egypt, which is again why the date on which he took the pointy thing, which points to the Ethiopian to identify the Antichrist, connects to the day that he died in Egypt, or Little Egypt, Memphis, Tennessee, named after Memphis, Egypt, and also connects to the day that he went to the Space Needle. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Okay, and I also forgot to add, while I was talking about Oprah Winfrey and her in Kalamazoo, and a connection to her speech at the Democrat National Convention when they sang "Let's Go Crazy," while she was wearing purple, and then the purple banana in the song "Let's Go Crazy," because that's what's happening, as I explained, okay? Well, anyway, that day connects with 66 days. And the book of Revelation is the 66th book in the Bible, and the Antichrist is his number is 666. It's also 18.03% of a year. In other words, 18% of a year. And 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And this is more confirmation that who they were singing of when they sang about the purple banana coming is the Antichrist. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus, please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.